But before we get into a discussion with David on the excitement that the 2015 season holds, let's take a look at what the season thus far has been like. Formula One this season is not just a two-horse race, but indicates that it has good days coming up for the fans of Formula One. There's been on-the-seat action, some amazing races, and the reason is that Team Ferrari is back in business after Sebastian Vettel's brilliant win in Malaysia. And the indications are that the season will go to the championship right up to the wire. That's the heart of Formula One. That's the road that comes thundering in to create a ripple in each vein. That beckons that this season, Formula One will be like no year before.
Ferrari's back, Ferrari's back. Fantastico.
The team, Italian. The engine, SV15T. The driver, Sebastian Vettel. The name, Ferrari. And the emergence of the prancing horse in S.p.A has opened new gates of excitement for Formula One this year.
Very, very delighted Ferrari crew.
Do you remember Formula One last year? Yes, there was speed. There were wins and defeats, there was competition. But between two drivers from one team. It was Lewis Hamilton versus Nico Rosberg. Two drivers, one team, Mercedes.
Turn 7.
But this year promises to be a tug-of-war between two drivers and two different teams. That's what makes the heart thump. And that's why it's different this time. And that's why Formula One like never before.
We want to be better this year. We want to try and dominate even more.
In Malaysia, Vettel delivered what he promised. Ferrari won their first F1 race since May 2013.
The wheels did not fall off.
And you can't keep Alonso out of the equation. He missed the first race due to injury and could not finish the next in Malaysia. But more is expected of him in McLaren cockpit. So buckle up as the 2015 season unfolds, because this year could be a multiple horse race. So fasten your seatbelts to enjoy the ride. Sports Bureau headlines today. David, your rivalry with Michael Schumacher is obviously legendary. In the 2001 season, you finished as a runner-up to him. My first question to you, you're joining us live from Hyderabad. Great to have you on the show. My first question is to you. What brings you to India, David?
Well, the traffic in India is special. That's right. So I'm convinced there's a future world champion amongst the Indian nation, because everyone seems to find their way through the traffic. But it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to showing the car tomorrow to some people who've never seen a Formula One car before, and hopefully we get a great reception.
David, Formula One is going through a lot of transformations. You know, the costs are going up. It is becoming difficult for teams to sustain. A lot of teams are pulling out of the race, the championship as well. Do you see it as good signs for Formula One in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's an interesting point of view, and certainly we have seen some teams disappear from the back of the grid. But like in any business, if you have a bad business model and you're spending more than you're taking in, then you will go out of business. But if you look at the teams that that have been sustainable for a number of years, then they're obviously been able to raise the finance to develop the new technologies. I think that what makes Formula One particularly expensive, if I can put it like that, relative to other forms of motorsport, is the fact that it is groundbreaking technology that is being developed on the racetrack. And there's so many examples, whether it's turbocharged engines, whether it's carbon fibre brakes, whether it's traction control, so many things over the history of Formula One that have found their way onto the road cars that we drive today. So I think that we have to try and find a balance between making sure there's enough teams that are out there being competitive with controlling some of the costs. but a bit like in everyday life and everyday business, you cannot put a glass ceiling on the business, otherwise people will find another way to really try and exploit their opportunities.
But David, Formula One is primarily going through a phase of domination. You see, still some seasons back it was Red Bull, and now you see it is Mercedes all the way. Do you see it as a good sign for the game, considering it is becoming difficult for the other teams to compete with these?
Yeah, but that success that Red Bull had for 4 years, or the success that Mercedes had last year, as you mentioned, is not their fault. You know, it's because they've brought together a good group of people and they've managed to make the technology work for them. So, you know, should they be handicapped to allow other people to catch up who've done not such a good job? So for me, Formula One is a reflection of everyday life. It's not manufactured in the way that you know, maybe in some other franchise sports. Everyone has a certain amount of income, and you could argue that, you know, it's maybe a little bit closer. Formula One is a reflection of everyday life, and people have to, you know, be able to, you know, run a sustainable business model. So, of course, if someone has developed a new technology which is particularly successful, then should they not benefit from that?
David, what about the 2015 season? We've seen 2 amazing races till now. It's a completely new lineup. You know, we see a German once again behind the Ferrari wheel, and we've got Alonso's move to McLaren. The Mercedes lineup, though, remains the same. What do you expect the 2015 season to be like? Well,
I wish I could pretend that I knew that Ferrari were going to win the second Grand Prix in Malaysia, but it was a surprise to me that they came back so strong, because after Australia we were all a little bit concerned that as you mentioned, the dominance of Mercedes last year might continue this year. But I think that what we've seen is that in Formula One, these great teams, they get their head down, they work hard. It takes time, but they are able to engineer their way out of difficulties. So I think it was a welcome return to form for Ferrari, and of course there's a certain symmetry to having a German driver in a Ferrari car winning that particular Grand Prix. So I think Mercedes are going to have to work hard in the coming races, whilst watching out for Williams, for Red Bull Racing, for Toro Rosso, who have had a great start with their 2 young drivers. So there's a lot to be excited about going forward in the remainder of the season.
But what about Vettel's performance in Malaysia? It's come as a big surprise to a lot of people. In fact, Mercedes team director went ahead and said that they did not expect Ferrari to catch up with them in the second week itself. And even Ferrari have gone ahead and said that there's lots that needs to be done before they can match up Mercedes. Do you feel Ferrari can continue this domination for the rest of the season?
Well, it is a fact that they performed on a winning level in Malaysia. They didn't luck into that victory. It was a fantastic qualifying performance from Sebastian, and it was a very, very strong race performance from him as well. So I still think the Mercedes have the momentum. They have the you know, maybe that last little bit of performance. But Ferrari are back, and I don't see why they shouldn't be able to be competitive in the coming races. But of course, as hard as they're working to try and beat Mercedes, then Red Bull Racing are doing the same thing. Williams, as I mentioned, and McLaren, Honda, way down at the back, will be coming forward. So that's why I think that 2015 won't just be about one driver, one team. I think it will be a number of exciting challenges going on. And, you know, in the end, hopefully we'll see some great wheel-to-wheel racing.
But you know, David, if we look at Ferrari, you've been speaking that they've had a good start, but 2014 season for them was a disaster completely, and to get out of it, the team went ahead for a complete overhaul. You know, in the entire backroom staff was changed. They got a new team, you know, new engineers, new team principal. Do you think that is something that has worked for Ferrari in the 2015 season?
Yeah, there's no question that when you restructure and you bring in different engineers, or you empower people in different areas, then you're constantly trying to find the right mix for the cake. And in the case of these teams that have been around and had success in the past, they know how to get that winning formula, but it's about finding willing people to work together. And you know, whether it was the dominance of Red Bull for 4 seasons there, or what we've seen with Mercedes last year, and now, as you mentioned, Ferrari coming back, it's because of people, and they're getting the right people in the right areas.
You know, David, we've obviously got up for Alonso's and Hamilton's and all, but for you, who is it, the driver, who should we be looking out for in the 2015 season?
Well, I think there's a number of great drivers in Formula One. If we start with the two guys that have won the two first races, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, of course. I think Daniel Ricciardo was incredible last season for Red Bull Racing. Fernando Alonso is a double world champion alongside Jenson Button. You know, Formula One is rich with talent, and if you look at the young drivers coming up, we've got Max Verstappen, 17-year-old, Carlos Sainz at 19. So there's a lot to really feel that Formula One's in safe hands going forward.
David, you have a great relationship with Michael Schumacher. You know, during your day, you've had famous run-ins with him as well. Currently, the way that Schumacher is, you know, obviously a very unfortunate incident. Have you been in touch with him? Can you elaborate, tell us about what is the status with Michael right now?
Well, we all wait for news of Michael's recovery. I haven't been in contact with him personally, but you know, he's at home, he's with his family, and he'll be, I'm sure, getting the best treatment that he possibly can. It's you know, obviously a difficult situation for his family, but many other people are involved in incidents and accidents and don't have the same resources that Michael has to get the best care possible. So we wait and we hope, and you know, personally I look forward to seeing him again at a racetrack in the future.
David, thank you so much for joining us on Headlines today. We do expect a great 2015 season, but let's move on now. And cricket is obviously the flavour of the season again, but the IPL has landed itself in a controversy. Two I-League football matches were shifted out of the Salt Lake City Stadium in Kolkata for the glitz and glamour of the IPL opening ceremony scheduled on April 8th. Two matches have been shifted to a much smaller Barsat Stadium on the outskirts of Kolkata following preparations for the IPL opening ceremony. The city's football fraternity has questioned the decision of shifting football matches for a Bollywood song and dance show. They are angry that matches are being shifted from a venue that is particularly meant for football just because IPL brings in more money.
Football stadium will be for football stadium. That should be continued. But welcome to IPL. By IPL, if IPL opening is Ranji Stadium by India, this Eden Garden, that is better for our footballers.
Well, let's move on now. An Indian batsman, Suresh Raina, tied the knot with childhood sweetheart Priyanka on Friday. The marriage took place at a posh Delhi hotel and was attended by the who's who of the cricketing fraternity. It's the beginning of a new innings for Suresh Raina. The swashbuckling batsman is now in a partnership for a lifetime. A partnership made in the present that's meant for the future. In a high-profile hotel in the capital, Suresh Raina married his childhood friend Priyanka Chaudhary. Priyanka was Raina's parents' choice to become his life partner. And being an obedient and simple person, Raina had no hesitation in accepting their choice. The bigwigs of the cricketing world were expected to come to grace the occasion, and they were all there. Raina's teammates from the Indian cricket team and teammates from his IPL team Chennai Super Kings also graced the occasion. All were there to wish Suresh Raina and Priyanka a long and happy married life. And we do too. Sports Bureau Headlines today. Well, of course, so a starry wedding out there for Suresh Raina, but as far as the world of badminton is concerned, once again Jwala Gutta has spoken out, and this time she has blamed coach Pullela Gopichand for keeping her out of the Target Olympics podium scheme. In a tweet targeted at the national coach, Jwala has said that it is not the government but Gopichand who's blamed for her plight.
In her tweet, Jwala has said that it's not the government but the coach to blame for their plight. This is just a few days after Jwala came out in the open, crying foul over being kept out of the scheme through social media.
Quite disappointing, you know, when you hear such things, and it's not the first time it is happening. It's been happening again and again, and somehow, you know, we pick ourselves up and from the situation, and we keep motivating ourselves.
Badminton Association of India had then made it clear that they were not against Jwala at all. Instead, they wanted Jwala to make her best efforts to qualify for the Olympics.
The persons who can take part in Olympics have to be qualified by the BWF ranking. So far she has not been qualified, what I have been made to understand. But I am open to the idea. If we will be very happy, and Jwala is our star player, Ashwani is our star player. We definitely acknowledge her achievements.
The fact is that Indian badminton has found a ground internationally, and such is the success of players like Saina, Sindhu and Shrikant that this sport is the #1 target sport to win medals for India in the Olympics. However, the fact also is that the players selected are singles players. So that begs the question, why not a single doubles team has been picked? Perhaps that is why Jwala Gutta is angry. Sports Bureau, headlines today.
Well, it wasn't a great day for badminton players all through. Saina Nehwal's dream run at the Malaysian Open also ended after she lost. Saina dominated proceedings in the final game and even had a 12-7 lead at the mini break. But Lee turned the match around with a brilliant display. Lee eventually held her nerves to clinch the game at 22-20, ending Saina's dream run in the tournament.